Karna has carried one weapon for years, one use, one certainty, one promise he made to himself in silence. Tonight, in a field lit by torches and desperation, that weapon will beg to leave his hand. And the question won't be who deserves it. The question will be who can afford it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on Kurukshetra when the day refuses to end. The sun is already gone, yet the ground still holds its heat, like a clay pot that won't cool, even after the fire is out. Dust clings to your tongue. Smoke hangs low from 1,000 torches, and every flame makes the shadows behind it look twice as crowded. There's no clean horizon anymore, just wavering light, moving silhouettes, the restless shine of armor, the soft glow of oil-soaked rags wrapped around spear tips, and the smell, ghee, sweat, trampled grass, horses, and that sharp iron note the earth gives off when it's been worked too hard. This isn't how battles are supposed to be fought. You can feel the old rules slipping, like a knot coming undone in the dark. Men blink grit from their eyes. Hands fumble for water skins that ran dry hours ago. Someone tries to laugh and it comes out like a cough. Congratulations. You've arrived at the first night battle of this war. The bad news is, you can't see who's sprinting at you. The worst news is, neither can they. Torches flicker along the lines like fireflies that learned anger. Drums thud somewhere far off, then stop, then start again, lost in their own confusion. Conch shells call out, and the sound doesn't feel triumphant tonight. It feels strained, like breath pushed through clenched teeth. You step carefully, because the ground is full of things that snag your feet. A dropped bow, a broken chariot yoke, a strip of silk from someone's banner, still stubbornly bright in the soot. Somewhere in this darkness, the grief from mourning still hasn't cooled. Abhimanyu, Arjuna's son, barely old enough to have proper beard stubble, was swallowed by a circling formation and never came back out. The elders who should have protected him stood like trees in a storm. The boy fought like a bright lamp in wind until the wind decided it was tired of being gentle. By late afternoon, Arjuna's sorrow had turned into a vow with a deadline. He chased Jayadratha across the field as the day bled away, carving through layers of defenders that kept closing like doors in a hallway. And then, at the edge of sunset, there was that strange moment when the light itself seemed to hesitate, as if the sky blinked, as if even the sun could be persuaded to play along for a heartbeat. Jayadratha fell before the true dusk could settle. Arjuna's vow held. But victory doesn't always bring stillness. Sometimes it brings a new kind of hunger. Now the night has taken the field, and with it comes permission. Not spoken permission. The kind that arrives when no one is watching closely enough to object. You hear a chariot wheel shudder over something it shouldn't. You hear a man whisper a prayer as he tightens his grip. You hear the dry click of arrowheads being set again and again because hands like to be busy when minds can't bear to think. The air is thick with torch smoke and panic. Eyes water, lungs complain. Even the horses look offended, ears pinned back, as if they'd like to argue with the war itself. In the Kaurava camp, The commanders cluster like storm clouds around a single fear. They've fought all day. They've lost men they thought were unlosable. And now, in the dark, where honor has trouble finding its sandals, something else is moving. Ghatotkacha. You don't see him clearly at first. No one does. You only feel the way the night seems to deepen where he passes, as if darkness is his natural cloth, and he wears it proudly. There are flashes, strange, sudden shapes at the edge of torchlight, a laugh that doesn't sound human, a rush of wind that smells like wild forest, leaves crushed between fingers. The human soldiers shrink back from that smell. They don't even mean to. Their bodies make the decision before their minds can argue. Because Ghatotkacha is not like the others. He is Bhima's son, yes, born of the Pandava with the shoulders of a bull and the appetite of a festival. But Ghatotkacha's mother was of the forest's older blood, the kind that doesn't ask permission from villages and doesn't care about polite boundaries. Rakshasa blood. Night strengthens him. Confusion feeds him. Fear is practically a snack. On the Kaurava side, you can sense Duryodhana's desperation spreading like spilled oil. The usual brave speeches aren't working. The usual formations don't hold. Warriors who can face Arjuna in daylight suddenly feel small when the shadows start playing tricks. And then there is Karna. You spot him by the steadiness of him. Torchlight makes everyone else flicker. Face is bright, then gone, then bright again. Karna holds his shape, tall, still, like a pillar that refuses to lean, even when the roof is burning. His armor catches the firelight and gives it back, calm and cold. His gaze stays fixed on the chaos where Ghatotkacha moves, because Karna is the sort of man who looks directly at what others pretend not to see. He has fought beside Duryodhana for too long to misunderstand that look on the king's face. It's not pride tonight, it's pleading. And Karna has one thing that can end this. A divine dart, Indra's Shakti, kept like a secret inside his chariot. Saved for a single throat, a single moment. Arjuna's moment. Karna has carried it through years, the way a man carries a grudge. Close, private, warm against the ribs. But Ghatotkacha is staring through the dark like a storm given arms. The Kaurava ranks are buckling. Torches fall and go out. The night gets bigger. You can almost feel it stretching. Duryodhana presses in close to Karna, and even without hearing every word, you know the shape of what he demands. His hand gestures sharply toward the darkness. His voice cracks on urgency. He wants the impossible solved now. He wants Karna to spend the unspendable. Karna's jaw tightens. The muscles in his cheek jump once, like a bowstring plucked. You can see what this costs him, because if he throws that Shakti tonight, it won't be there tomorrow or the next day. It won't be there when Arjuna's chariot finally comes within perfect range. One weapon, one use, one choice. And in the thick, torch-stained air, you can almost hear the unspoken words pressing against Karna's. Ani teeth, use the Shakti. The battlefield sways, torches hiss. Somewhere, a man calls out for his brother and gets no answer. You draw a slow breath, tasting smoke and dust, and you realize the night is holding its own breath too. But you can't understand Ghatotkacha's shadow unless you know where it began. Not on a battlefield, in a forest. Years earlier, when the Pandavas were not kings or commanders, just fugitives with blistered feet and ash in their hair. When they slept on hard ground that offered no softness at all, no silk, no cushions, not even a decent mat. Just earth, just roots, just the kind of night where every rustle sounds like teeth. You're going there now. You're going to the moment when a young prince, Bhima, heavy with exhaustion and stubborn life, walked beneath sal trees and unknowingly stepped into the gaze of a Rakshasi watching from the branches. The war is roaring behind you, but the forest is already breathing ahead. And in that forest, under the perfume of crushed leaves and wood smoke, the beginning waits, quiet, strange, and hungry. The trees close in fast, not politely, like a garden path, like a crowd. The sal trunks stand shoulder to shoulder, dark and straight, and the leaves high above whisper as if they're sharing news you're not meant to hear. The air still carries a faint bitterness, smoke that has traveled far, smoke that remembers a burning house, even when the ground beneath your feet pretends it doesn't. This is the forest you run into when the world wants you gone. And the Pandavas are running. They don't look like princes now, not in any way that matters. Their hair is tangled with ash and twig snag, their fine cloth torn into strips that could pass for rags if you squint. Even their jewelry, what little remains, seems ashamed, dulled by sweat and dirt. You're walking with them, and the night is heavy, not just dark, heavy. The kind of dark that presses on your eyelids and makes every sound feel closer than it is. Crickets rasp like tiny saws. Somewhere, far off, an owl calls once, and it's not comforting, it's accounting. Bhima moves at the front like a bull who refuses to admit he's tired. Except he is tired. He's carrying Kunti as if she weighs nothing, her arms looped around his neck, her cheek against his shoulder. He pretends it's easy. Bhima pretends a lot of things are easy, but every few steps his breath roughens and his calves burn, and the muscles in his back knot up tight as rope. Behind him stumble the others. Yudhishthira, with his steady eyes, Bhima's favorite brother in the world, for being calm when everyone else is panicking. Arjuna keeps turning his head as if he can shoot the darkness just by staring at it. The twins, Nakula and Sahadeva, move like shadows of themselves, hungry and quiet. And you can feel it in your own legs now. The ache of walking on roots and stones, the sting of leaves that slap your ankles, the grit that sneaks into your sandals until every step is a complaint. The forest smells of crushed green, damp earth, and old sap. Sometimes you catch a sweeter scent, wild jasmine hiding somewhere. Then it's gone, swallowed by moss and night. They find a place at last where the ground dips into a small hollow, a natural shelter, a ring of bushes like a secret. It's not a palace bed. It's not even a decent floor. It's just earth that's slightly less cruel than the earth around it. Bhima lowers Kunti carefully. His arms tremble when he lets her go, like his body doesn't want to admit it's been working. The others sink down without ceremony, too exhausted for dignity. Yudhishthira murmurs a few words, half prayer, half instruction, and even those words come out thin, like the night is stealing syllables. You settle with them, and the quiet is so big, you can almost hear your own heartbeat thudding against your ribs. For a moment, just a moment, it feels like safety. Then the wind shifts, and you notice something else in the air, a faint sharpness, a wildness, like the smell of a storm that hasn't arrived yet. Bhima's head lifts, not like a man waking up, like an animal that has heard a twig snap. You feel it too, that prickling along your scalp, that sense of being watched from a place you can't see. The forest has eyes tonight, Not metaphorical, not poetically. Up in the branches, something moves without sound. A woman. At first, your mind tries to make her human. The shape is right. The hair is long, loose, falling like a black river over her shoulders. The face, sharp in the moonlight, could be beautiful if you weren't so aware of the way she's holding herself. Too still, too sure. Her eyes don't blink the way yours do. This is Hidimbi, a Rakshasi of the forest, used to hunters getting lost, used to travelers becoming stories that end abruptly. She's seen fear 1,000 times. It's a familiar perfume to her. And then Bhima shifts in the hollow below, and something in her expression changes. Fascination. Because Bhima smells like sweat and smoke and stubborn life. He smells like a man who has been chased and still refuses to bend. Even half-starved, even exhausted, he is packed with strength, as if the gods needed him from muscle and will. Hidimbi leans forward slightly, watching him the way someone watches a fire that refuses to die down. You can almost feel her curiosity, like a touch on your skin. She slips down from the tree without a sound. No crunch of leaf, no scrape of bark. The forest seems to make room for her. She moves to the edge of the hollow and looks at them all. 5 brothers and 1 weary mother, like she's counting, and then she flinches, just once, not from the humans, from something else. A presence sliding through the trees with a hungry impatience. Her brother, Hidimba. He arrives like a bad thought you can't shake off. Broad-shouldered, heavy-footed, eyes glinting with appetite. The air around him seems to thicken, as if even the night resents having to hold him. He doesn't look at Hidimbi with affection. He looks at her like a tool that's been sitting unused. He makes a demand of her, sharp, simple, practiced. He wants the sleeping humans dragged out. He wants them brought down. He wants the forest fed. You're close enough to feel your stomach tighten at the certainty in him. Hidimbi doesn't move. Her gaze flicks back to Bhima, then to Kunti, so thin in her son's arms a moment ago, then to the brothers, young and worn, and still somehow shining with a stubborn kind of dignity. Something in her refuses. She tells her brother she won't do it. Not with a long speech, not with pleading, with the bluntness of someone who has surprised herself. Hidimba's face twists. He steps closer, and the leaves beneath his feet finally crunch, loud as bones breaking sticks. He raises a hand as if he might strike her, because some brothers only know one language, and Hidimbi, for all her wildness, suddenly looks small. Not weak, just caught. Then Bhima stands. It happens so fast, you barely register the shift. One moment he's crouched near his family, trying to be a wall. The next he's upright, filling the hollow, his shadow stretching long across the ground. You feel the change in the air. The forest notices too. Bhima's eyes lock onto Hidimba. He doesn't ask who he is. He doesn't need the introduction. The shape of danger is universal. Hidimba laughs. At least he makes a sound meant to be laughter. He steps forward like he's about to pluck Bhima apart. Bhima cracks his neck once, as if this is merely inconvenient. A humorless thought floats through you. Of all the nights for a family argument, this is not the ideal one. The fight doesn't start with weapons. It starts with hands, with feet digging into leaf litter, with breath hitting cold air, with the simple fact that one of them is used to terrorizing men, and the other has been terrorized since birth by being the strongest person in the room. You're right there, heart hammering, as Bhima meets Hidimba head-on. The ground shudders under their weight. Branches rattle. Birds explode out of the canopy in a frantic burst, as if the sky itself is trying to get away. Hidimba swings with brutish confidence. Bhima moves like a storm contained in a human body. There's no elegance to it, no flourish, only force meeting force. The kind that makes you grateful you're not a tree in the way. The smell of the forest changes, sap torn open, damp soil churned up, the metallic tang of sweat. The night wind carries it all into your lungs until you taste wildness on your tongue. Hidimbi watches, frozen, not in fear, in awe, because she's never seen anyone answer her brother's hunger with this kind of refusal. Bhima drives forward. Hidimba stumbles back. They crash through bushes that had been minding their own business for years. Thorns snag cloth. Leaves whirl like startled insects. And then, sudden, decisive, Bhima finds the moment. Bhima grabs. He wrenches. He twists with the full torque of his body, like he's uprooting a stubborn stump. Hidimba's strength breaks. Not slowly, not tragically, like a branch that finally gives. The Rakshasa falls. The forest goes oddly quiet, as if everything is listening for what comes next. Hidimbi steps forward, her breath coming faster now. Her brother is down. The one who demanded, who threatened, who ruled their little corner of the woods by fear. Down. She looks at Bhima with eyes that shine in the moonlight, eyes full of something new, something dangerous in a different way. Desire, not the careless hunger Hidimba carried. Something warmer, stranger, almost human. Bhima stands over the fallen Rakshasa, chest heaving. His hands are dirty. His shoulders rise and fall like a bellows. He looks back toward the hollow, checking, always checking where Kunti and his brothers are. And Hidimbi, in that moment, chooses. She comes close enough that you can see the texture of her hair, the way it catches bits of leaf. She lowers her gaze, not submissive exactly, but softening. She tells Bhima, without theatrics, that she wants him, just like that. The forest doesn't gasp, but you do. Bhima blinks at her as if he's been offered something utterly unrelated to the night he's having, like a man sprinting from a fire being asked if he'd like to stop and admire a flower. He's suspicious. Of course he is. He's been hunted, betrayed, burned out of his own home. Trust is a luxury item, and Bhima is traveling light. But Hidimbi doesn't lunge. She doesn't claw. She doesn't circle him like prey. She waits. There's an awkwardness to it that feels almost ordinary, the way extraordinary moments often do. Like the world has gone mad, but the people inside it still have to decide where to put their hands. Bhima finally motions her back, keeping distance, and turns to Kunti. Kunti sits up, slow and careful. Her face in the moonlight is tired, past tears. A mother who has carried 5 sons through too many dangers, who has watched houses burn and men smile politely while sharpening knives. She studies Hidimbi. You can feel Kunti measuring the Rakshasi the way a woman measures a river before stepping in, not with hatred, with caution, with the fierce practicality of someone who knows survival, sometimes wears strange faces. Hidimbi lowers herself to the ground. She doesn't bow like a court lady. She settles like a creature of the forest, trying to look harmless, which is almost funny in its own way. Like a tiger, politely pretending it's a house cat. Kunti listens as Hidimbi makes her case, quickly, urgently. She speaks of being alone, of choosing Bhima, of offering protection through these woods, where other Rakshasas roam and smell weakness the way dogs smell meat. Bhima stands there, suddenly looking younger than he did a moment ago, like a boy caught doing something he didn't plan to do. His bravery is easy on a battlefield. This is different. This is the kind of bravery that has no map. You're close enough to notice how Bhima keeps glancing at his brothers, as if hoping one of them will tell him what to do. Yudhishthira's face stays calm, but his eyes flicker with the slightest surprise. Arjuna looks away, deliberately, as if he'd rather face a rain of arrows than his brother's romantic complications. Nakula and Sahadeva, exhausted, look like they might fall asleep right in the middle of this decision, which is honestly impressive. The forest air cools. Somewhere nearby, a night-blooming flower opens, and the scent drifts in, sweet, thick, almost dizzying. It mixes with smoke and sweat and the bruised green smell of torn leaves. Kunti's gaze stays on Bhima. She knows what he is: strong, loyal, fierce. She also knows what youth is, and loneliness, and the strange turns the world takes when you've been running for your life. Her permission doesn't come with celebration. It comes with conditions, the way a mother offers a blanket when the night turns cold. Practical, brief, protective, and when she finally speaks, it's almost gentle. She gives Bhima leave, for a time, to accept this Rakshasi who has chosen him. One small sentence lands in the hollow, simple as a dropped pebble. Go, if your heart pulls you. Bhima's breath releases, slow and surprised, like he didn't realize he was holding it. Hidimbi's face changes, not into triumph, not into gloating, into relief, into something tender enough that it startles you. Bhima steps closer to her, still wary, still ready to fight if this turns into another trap. But Hidimbi doesn't reach for him like prey. She reaches like a woman who has never asked for anything and can't quite believe she has been given an answer. The brothers settle back down. The night, exhausted by violence and decisions, begins to quiet again. And you feel it, that strange settling after danger passes. Your muscles loosen a fraction. Your jaw unclenches. The insects resume their chorus as if they'd only paused out of respect. Hidimbi leads Bhima away, not far, not deep into the unknown, just beyond the hollow where Kunti can still be reached if she calls. The forest holds them both. Above, the moon drifts between leaves like a pale lamp carried by an invisible hand. The ground is cool underfoot, and the air is wet enough that it beads on your skin. Somewhere, a stream murmurs over stones, steady and indifferent, like it has seen 1,000 exiles and will see 1,000 more. Bhima, who can split trees with his strength, looks almost shy now, unsure where to put all that power when no one is attacking. Hidimbi, who could have been a nightmare, is careful with him. She shows him a place where the grass grows soft, a place sheltered by roots like curved ribs. She sits beside him, close enough to share warmth, and the scent of her is the scent of the forest itself, earth after rain, crushed leaves, a hint of something wild and sweet. For a while, neither of them needs many words. The night is doing enough talking. And you, standing at the edge of this strange turning point, can feel how fate moves sometimes, not with trumpets, not with prophecy, with tired feet, with a mother's reluctant blessing, with a Rakshasi looking down from a branch, seeing a human who refuses to be afraid. Back in the hollow, Kunti lies down again, her sons around her like a living fence. Yudhishthira keeps watch without making a show of it. Arjuna's hand rests near where a weapon would be, even in sleep. The twins breathe evenly, finally giving their bodies permission to rest. The forest wraps them all in its dark cloth. And somewhere nearby, hidden under the sigh of leaves and the steady hush of the stream, a union begins, quiet, unlikely, and powerful enough to reach all the way to a battlefield years later. Because in this very night, under these trees, something is being set into motion. Not an army, not a crown, a child who will not belong to any one world. The wedding lasted 1 month. Bhima had promised Kunti no longer. But in that month, something took root. Not the kind of root you can pull up, not the kind you can stomp down. It begins quietly, the way the forest begins its work, one soft thread at a time, winding itself through everything. Day after day, the hollow changes. Smoke rises from cooking fires that don't try to be invisible. Wildflowers appear in little bundles, set beside stones like shy offerings. Hidimbi's laugh, rare, surprised by itself, turns up now and then between the trees. And Bhima, who used to wake ready to fight the whole world, starts waking like a man who has somewhere to be. You can feel it if you stand there with them at dawn, when the mist is still low and the grass soaks your ankles. The air smells of wet earth and crushed basil. Somewhere, a peacock calls like it's arguing with the sky. Kunti watches all of it with the look mothers get when they're counting days. Because promises are promises and exile is exile. Hidimbi knows this too. She knows the shape of human time, the way it runs forward and doesn't wait for anyone to catch up. So she doesn't cling. She simply stays near Bhima, close enough that his shadow and hers touch on the ground, and she lets the month happen. When it happens, when the child begins to form, there is no trumpet in the trees. There is only Hidimbi going quiet, her hand resting against her own belly, as if she's listening through skin. Bhima notices, because Bhima notices everything that might be a threat. And this is not a threat. This is weight. This is warmth. This is something fierce and gentle at the same time, which is a combination Bhima is still learning to hold. The forest holds its breath with them. Nights come thick with insect song, and the sky is a bowl of stars tipped over the canopy. The brothers sleep in their rough cloth, weapons within reach, because habit doesn't vanish just because love has arrived. And you, if you're standing close enough to the fire, can smell the ghee as it hits the coals. You can hear the pop and sigh of burning wood. You can feel how the air cools suddenly when a cloud crosses the moon. Then one morning, the birds stop their usual bickering. The hollow is too still. Hidimbi's breathing changes, deep and steady, like a drum played slowly. Bhima sits near her, wide-eyed in a way you don't often see on a man who has wrestled demons. He looks as if he wants to fight the pain on her behalf. But there's nothing to strike, nothing to lift and throw, only waiting. The sun climbs, the light turns honey gold. Somewhere downhill, water runs over stones with a sound like someone whispering a secret again and again. And then, suddenly, the waiting breaks. A cry rises, sharp and new. A child is in Hidimbi's arms. Small, dark-haired, wrinkled in that ancient, serious way babies have, like they've already seen too much of the world and are not impressed. Bhima leans in as if he's approaching a cobra. Careful, reverent, slightly confused. You can almost see him thinking, I can uproot a tree, but can I hold this? Hidimbi lifts the baby toward him. Bhima takes him with both hands, as if receiving a sacred offering that might bite. The baby's grip closes around Bhima's finger, and Bhima freezes. absolutely freezes because the grip is strong, not sweet little baby strong, strong. The baby clenches like he means it. Bhima's mouth pulls into a grin that he tries to hide because he is Bhima and he is not supposed to be melted by anything. But it happens anyway. The day moves on. The fire needs tending. The brothers need food. Kunti needs water. Life does not pause for miracles. It simply makes room for them. But the miracle doesn't stop at birth. It accelerates. By afternoon, the baby has filled out as if he drank the sunlight itself. His eyes track movement with a focus that makes you glance at Hidimbi as if to ask permission to be startled. By sunset, he is not lying limp in the crook of an arm. He's pushing up. He's trying to sit. His little head wobbles like a determined mango about to fall, but he keeps trying anyway. You're there when Hidimbi sets him on a soft patch of grass, and the grass bends under him more than it should. You can feel the strangeness crawl up your spine, not fear exactly, more like awe mixed with bewilderment. A Rakshasa child grows like the forest grows after rain. Too fast, too bold, too alive. Bhima watches his son with a pride that's almost comical. He tries to be solemn. He really does. But then the boy grabs a fistful of Bhima's hair and yanks hard enough to make Bhima's head tilt. Bhima makes a sound like he swallowed a laugh and it got stuck. Hidimbi's eyes glitter. Kunti, from where she sits, doesn't laugh out loud. She's too wise for that. But her mouth twitches. Because yes, Bhima has finally met something in this world that can pull him around. And it's wearing no armor at all. Days pass like a quickened dream. The child crawls, then stands, then walks with that clumsy authority toddlers have, as if the earth is lucky to have them stepping on it. His hair thickens. His shoulders broaden. His hands look less like baby hands and more like tools. He eats like a small storm. Fruits disappear. Cooked rice vanishes. Milk, if they can find it, doesn't stand a chance. Once, Bhima hands him a lump of sweetened flour, thinking it will slow him down. The boy stares at it for half a heartbeat, then shoves the whole thing into his mouth, cheeks bulging, eyes proud. Bhima looks at Hidimbi as if to say, "Is this normal?" Hidimbi's expression says, "For him, yes." The forest seems to lean in closer, listening. Even the animals act different around the boy. Monkeys watch him from branches with suspicious respect. Deer keep their distance. And at night, when the fire is low and the brother's breathing evens out, you can hear the child's small sounds, soft snarls in his sleep, the occasional happy sigh. Not frightening, just not entirely human. And still, there's tenderness everywhere. Hidimbi hums under her breath while she combs her fingers through his hair. Bhima carries him on one shoulder like a sack of grain, except the sack of grain occasionally tries to bite his ear. Bhima pretends to be annoyed. He is not annoyed. He is ruined. But promises are promises. One morning, Kunti rises early, wraps her shawl tight, and looks at the line of trees as if she can see roads hidden inside them. Yudhishthira speaks quietly to his brothers. Arjuna checks his weapons. The twins pack what little they have. Exile doesn't ask if your heart is ready. It simply taps its foot and waits. Hidimbi knows the sound of that tap. She becomes very still. Bhima tries to bargain with time the way strong men do, by sheer stubbornness. He lingers. He lifts the boy again and again, as if memorizing the weight of him. The child, no, not a child anymore, not really, clings to Bhima's neck, face pressed to his shoulder. His breath smells like fruit and smoke. You stand close enough to see it. Bhima's jaw tight, his eyes too bright. He tells Hidimbi, in his rough, earnest way, that he will return, that he will come back when he can, that this is not an ending. Hidimbi doesn't mock him. She doesn't soften him with false comfort either. She touches Bhima's arm, a gesture gentle enough to make even a man like him go quiet. She knows what humans mean when they promise. They mean it with their whole chest. And then life drags them away anyway. The boy watches. He watches with eyes that are too old for his face because he has grown too fast to be fooled by pretty words. He doesn't cry the way a human child might. Instead, he goes silent. The forest goes silent with him. When the Pandavas finally step onto the path, the dust rises around their feet in pale puffs. The air is warming already, the kind of heat that settles on your skin like a hand. Leaves tremble overhead. Somewhere, far off, a woodpecker knocks at a trunk with patient insistence. Bhima walks last. Of course he does. He keeps turning his head as if his gaze can tie him back to this place. Hidimbi stands at the edge of the hollow, one hand resting on her son's shoulder, and her son, half demon, half man, takes one step forward, just one, as if he might follow, as if the pull in his chest is strong enough to uproot destiny. Then Hidimbi's hand firms, not harsh, just certain, and he stops. You can feel the moment stretch like a bowstring. Bhima looks back one last time. He lifts his hand. It isn't a grand gesture. It's clumsy. It's human. And then he turns. The trees swallow him. The sound of their footsteps fades. And in the hollow, where the fire still smells faintly of last night's ghee and ash, a boy stands between worlds and learns the first lesson of his life. People leave, even the ones who love you. Years don't pass normally for him. They rush, like rivers in monsoon, like wind through bamboo, like shadows racing across the ground when clouds run wild overhead. Hidimbi raises him in the deep places of the forest, where the sunlight comes down in broken coins. She teaches him to listen to roots and stones, to hear what moves under the earth, to smell rain before it arrives. His body grows tall, too tall. His shoulders broaden until even the trees seem to make space. His teeth sharpen. His laughter deepens. His appetite becomes legendary among the creatures of the wood. Sometimes he sits by the stream, elbows on knees, watching his reflection ripple and distort. Some days he looks almost human. Some days he looks like the forest decided to stand up and walk around. And always he is both. When he wanders near villages at the forest's edge, people feel him before they see him. Dogs stop barking mid-bark. Smoke from cooking fires seems to hesitate. The air tastes different, like metal before lightning. Women pull children indoors. Men grip tools that suddenly feel too small. He doesn't hurt them. He doesn't even want to frighten them. But his shadow is wrong for their doorways. His presence makes their ordinary lives feel thin as cloth. So he learns to keep his distance. And when he goes deeper into Rakshasa haunts, those darker pockets where night seems to pool, he finds no easy welcome there either. Some look at him and smell the human in him. They call him soft. They call him Bhima's mistake. They don't say it to Hidimbi's face, because Hidimbi's face can still make grown demons decide they have somewhere else to be. But he hears. He always hears. So he becomes good at being alone. Not sad and helpless alone. Proud alone. The kind of alone that sharpens you. He runs along treetops, branches bending under his feet like willing servants. He practices his mother's arts, letting the air shimmer around him until his outline blurs. He learns to make himself larger, smaller, stranger. He learns the secret ways of night, and yet, sometimes, he sits very still, listening for a sound he remembers from that first month. A human laugh, a human voice, deep and rough, speaking his name like it belongs in the world. It doesn't come, not often. Bhima has battles to fight, kingdoms to win, humiliations to swallow, vows to make. Life hauls him forward like an ox cart on a steep road. And so the boy grows into a young warrior with no court, no brothers nearby, no one to clap him on the back and say, "You did well." He is loved fiercely by one mother in one forest, and remembered faintly by a father who is always marching somewhere else. Then one day, at last, it happens. A call, not a letter, not a messenger with polite words and gifts. A summons that feels like it travels through the roots, through wind, through bone. You can almost hear it if you stand with him in the dark under the sal trees, when the night smells of damp bark and blooming jasmine. The insects pause, as if even they are listening. Bhima needs him. He feels it like a hand closing around his heart. Hidimbi looks at him, and she doesn't try to hold him back. This is the strange shape of their lives. The human world forgets him until it needs him. And still, when the call comes, something in him lifts. He doesn't hesitate. Of course he doesn't, because for all the loneliness, for all the half-belonging, one truth has stayed steady as a drumbeat. That man was his father. That name, Bhima, was the one bridge he has. So he goes. He goes with the speed of storm clouds. He goes with the joy of a boy who was left behind and is finally being noticed. He goes with the quiet pride of someone who can arrive like an answer. And every time he returns to the forest afterward, the silence sits beside him again. Not cruel, just familiar. He grows used to it, the way you grow used to a scar that aches in the rain. Summoned, needed, dismissed, and summoned again. Yet each time Bhima calls, Ghatotkacha comes. That is his nature. That is his devotion. A life lived at the edge of two worlds, always running toward a voice that never learned how to stay. And somewhere far away, beyond these trees, beyond these quiet years, drums are already being tested. Conches are already being lifted to lips. The earth is already preparing a field wide enough to hold everyone's fate. But for now, stay with him in the forest. Feel the cool mud underfoot by the stream. Hear Hidimbi's bangles softly clink as she moves through the shadows. And watch the boy, who grew too fast, lift his face to the wind, listening. Because another call is coming, bigger than the rest. And this time, it won't be a brief errand. It will be a road that leads all the way to Kurukshetra. 13 years pass. Exile, humiliation, a kingdom lost to dice. And then the conch shells begin to blow. Not in celebration, in summoning. You feel it before you understand it. The way the air tightens, like the world has drawn a long breath and is holding it. The roads begin to thicken with wheels. The dusty paths fill with hoofbeats. Men stop pretending they're just traveling to visit cousins. Now they travel with armor wrapped in cloth. Now they travel with bows kept close. In the Pandavas' camp, days have a new rhythm. Dawn is for planning. Midday is for forging. Night is for listening to the far-off drum and pretending it's thunder. The smell is all work. Hot iron, sweat, oil leather, key lamps burning low in tents where maps are spread on the floor. You hear blacksmiths striking metal until your bones learn the sound. Even the horses seem restless, stamping and snorting as if they can sense what field waits for them. And through it all, messages arrive, like migrating birds. A king will support them. A king will refuse. A king will promise, then ask for guarantees, then promise again. You start to realize war is not one event. It's a net being pulled tight, knot by knot. On one of those evenings, when the sun goes red and flat and the whole camp looks dipped in copper, Bhima steps away from the noise. He doesn't announce it. He just goes quiet. He walks to the edge of the tents, where the ground is less trampled, where the grasses still stand up straight. He faces the open air, the darkening line of trees, and he calls, not with a conch, not with a drum, with a voice that has shouted down demons and laughed in the face of kings. A father's voice. You're standing close enough to feel the hair rise on your arms when he does it. The call rolls out over the plain, heavy and certain, and then the world waits. For a moment, nothing answers. Only the normal sounds, distant laughter, a baby crying somewhere, the clink of someone setting down a pot. A few soldiers glance over like they're trying not to stare at the prince, who is apparently calling into empty space. Then the air changes. It cools too quickly. The wind turns strange, as if it's coming from a cave mouth instead of the open sky. Smoke slides along the ground, thin as a scarf, and you catch the sharp scent of resin and wild herbs, the kind that burn in forest rituals. Somebody mutters a prayer under his breath. Someone else pretends he didn't. And then the shadows move, not like a man walking into lamplight, like night itself is arriving early, bringing guests. Out on the plain, shapes rise, tall, loping silhouettes, with shoulders too broad and steps too silent for their size. Torches flare as soldiers lift them higher, and the firelight catches glints of metal and bone ornaments and strange charms tied with black thread. The first Rakshasa comes into view, and you understand why even brave men swallow hard. He's enormous, not bloated, not clumsy, built like a tree that learned how to fight. His hair is a dark tangle. His eyes gleam like wet stone in moonlight. His ornaments look like they were made by hands that don't care for human taste. And then, behind him, more, a whole company, a small army. They spread out in a loose, confident way, as if they're walking into their own home. Some carry weapons that look carved from old dark wood. Some wear armor that doesn't shine like a king's. It drinks the light instead. And at the center, taller than the rest, comes Ghatotkacha. You haven't seen him since he was a boy, who grew too fast and left too often. Now he's a man, if man is the right word. He's taller than Bhima. That fact lands like a stone. Bhima, who has always been the mountain in any crowd, now has to lift his chin to look into his son's face. The camp goes quiet, in a way camps rarely do. Even the horses stop fussing, like they've decided this is not their conversation. Ghatotkacha reaches the edge of the torchlight, and you can finally see him clearly. His skin catches the flame in odd tones, as if the light can't decide what it's looking at. His hands are huge, but careful. He stands with the ease of someone who has never had to make himself smaller for anyone. And still, when his gaze finds Bhima, something soft passes over his face. He bows his head, not like a servant, like a son who has been waiting a long time to do that in front of other people. Bhima doesn't know what to do with his hands for half a heartbeat. This warrior, who can crush enemies like sugarcane, suddenly looks like a man trying to remember how you greet someone you love without turning it into a contest of strength. He reaches out, grips his son's forearm, and then pulls him into an embrace that is more collision than hug. You hear the thump of it. Rings and bangles clink, Rakshasa metal against human jewelry. Bhima says his son's name like he's tasting it again, checking that it's real. Ghatotkacha answers with one simple word, almost too quiet to hear. Father. The torches crackle. Somewhere behind you, a soldier exhales like he's been holding his breath since the shadows first moved. The Rakshasa army settles outside the main circle of tents. Not ordered there. They choose it. They squat in loose groups and light their own fires. And those fires burn differently. The smoke is darker. The smell is sharper. It carries roasted roots and something wild. Forest spice, charred leaves, and a hint of wet earth. Human soldiers give that ring of fire a wide berth, not out of cruelty, out of instinct. You can feel it, how people step sideways rather than pass too close, how they suddenly remember an errand elsewhere. Even seasoned fighters who have marched beside kings and elephants find themselves avoiding the Rakshasa's eyes. A few boys stare too long, trying to prove bravery. Their mothers pull them away by the ear, fast, and the Rakshasas, for their part, seem amused by the whole thing. One of them picks up a human cooking pot, turns it over like it's a tiny toy, and sets it back down with exaggerated care. Another sniffs the air near a line of tethered horses and makes a face, as if deciding humans keep their animals far too clean. You can't help it. A laugh rises in your chest. It's absurd. This careful dance around a fire, like the camp is a marketplace, and everyone is pretending not to see the merchant they're afraid will haggle. But the laughter fades when you glance toward the command tents. Arjuna is there. He's watching. The torchlight slides over his face, and you see that quick calculation in his eyes. Not suspicion, exactly. More like respect, mixed with caution. He has met many warriors, many kings, many men with divine weapons. Still, something about Ghatotkacha makes even Arjuna pause, as if he's looking at a storm cloud and wondering how much rain it holds. Krishna stands nearby, calm as ever, the kind of calm that makes you want to shake him by the shoulders just to see if he's truly human. He says little. He simply observes the reunion like someone watching a river return to its old course. Later, when the camp settles into a fragile routine again, Bhima does what Bhima always does when emotion gets too large. He feeds it. He orders food brought, not delicate palace food, real food, hot, heavy, generous. Steam rises from pots. The scent of rice and lentils and fried bread drifts through the tents. Human soldiers eat with relief, as if a full belly might keep war at a distance for one more night. Ghatotkacha accepts what's offered with polite restraint, but you can tell the human dishes are only half his appetite. His own men bring their own provisions, forest things, smoked and dried, strange fruits wrapped in leaves. The two cuisines sit side by side like neighboring kingdoms, friendly, wary. And then, in the middle of it, someone approaches. Ghatotkacha, a young man, not fully a boy, not yet hardened into the stillness of older warriors. His shoulders are strong, his posture proud, his eyes bright with the restless fire of youth. Abhimanyu, Arjuna's son, he walks with a confidence that tries not to look like it's trying. He has that particular kind of bravery that comes from being loved by many and tested by few. You're close enough to see the way Abhimanyu looks up at Ghatotkacha, not with fear, with curiosity, with that hunger young warriors have when they meet someone who feels like a legend. Ghatotkacha studies him in return, and you can feel something click into place. Recognition, not of a face, of a bond. Half-brothers, different mothers, different worlds, the same complicated father line threading them together. They don't fall into noisy conversation. That would be too easy, too clean. Instead, they stand near the fire and share a quiet moment. Abhimanyu listening intently as Ghatotkacha gestures toward the dark horizon, describing with his hands more than his words. Ghatotkacha's tone is gentle for someone so large. Abhimanyu's pride softens into attention. You can almost see it forming between them, an understanding made not of promises, but of presence. Two young fighters, both eager to prove something. One raised among humans who praise him. One raised among shadows that never fully claimed him. And still, they find kinship like travelers finding water. The night deepens, crickets start up in the grass. Somewhere an owl calls and is answered from far away. The camp's noise dims into a low murmur, like a city settling into sleep. You walk past the Rakshasa fires and feel the heat of them on your skin. The flames are fed with wood that smells sharp, almost medicinal. The smoke stings your eyes, and for a moment, you can't tell whether you're tearing up from the fire or from the sight of Bhima sitting with his son. Bhima tries to be casual. He fails. He keeps looking at Ghatotkacha like he's checking that he hasn't vanished again. He asks about Hidimbi, and his voice grows careful on her name, as if he's stepping onto sacred ground. Ghatotkacha answers with steady affection. His mother is well. The forest still stands. The streams still run cold in the morning. The old trees still make their own kind of temple. And Bhima nods, swallowing something heavy, because he hears everything in that answer. He hears the life that continued without him. He hears the years he missed. He hears, too, the fact that this call is different. This call is not a quick errand. This is a road that may not bring his son back to the forest. Abhimanyu lingers near the edge of the group, pretending not to listen too closely, but you can see he's absorbing every tone, every pause. He glances once toward Arjuna's tent, where lamplight glows through cloth. Arjuna is nearby, but not here, not in this circle, not in this father and son gravity. And Abhimanyu, like all children of heroes, seems used to that strange distance. Loved deeply, yes, held closely, when time allows. Ghatotkacha watches him, and you can tell he understands without being told. He understands what it is to be summoned by war more often than by affection. He shifts closer, making space by the fire. Abhimanyu steps into it. For a while, the three of them sit with the flames between them. Bhima, Ghatotkacha, Abhimanyu, one father, two sons, and a silence that says more than speech ever could. The stars wheel slowly overhead. The air cools. A thin mist begins to creep along the ground, silvering the grass. In the distance, you hear an elephant rumble, low and sleepy, and the sound feels impossibly gentle for an army camp. Somewhere beyond these tents, beyond the flickering lights and the careful alliances, Kurukshetra waits. A field wide enough for everyone's vows. A field hungry for names. Ghatotkacha lifts his face to the night sky, and you see the old habit in him, the listening, not for his mother's bangles, not for forest streams, for the next call. And in that quiet, with the Rakshasa fires crackling and the human camp pretending it isn't afraid, you feel the shape of what's coming. Two young warriors, too brave, too eager, too ready to be used by a war that will never admit it needs them. The night holds them gently anyway, for now. Warm firelight, cool grass, the soft clink of armor being set aside. And a father, at last, sitting close enough to remember the weight of his son's presence while he still can. 13 days of war, 13 days of dying by the rules, and then Abhimanyu falls, and the rules die with him. Morning comes over Kurukshetra like a tired breath, not bright, not hopeful, just light, scraping itself across dust and broken chariots, across banners hanging like wilted flowers. You walk through the Pandava camp and you feel it immediately. That strange hush people get when they're afraid to speak a name out loud. The air smells of old smoke, trampled grass, and ghee that's been reheated too many times. Somewhere a conch sounds, and it doesn't feel like courage. It feels like somebody reminding the world to keep going. Arjuna's tent is surrounded by men who don't know what to do with their hands. You can see the grief in them, the way you see heat on stone, wavering, unavoidable. Warriors who can face an elephant charge will not meet each other's eyes. A servant stands with a bowl of water that no one touches. Inside, Arjuna sits as if someone has taken the bones out of him. He isn't wailing, he isn't raging, he's just quiet. And that quiet is worse than shouting, because it makes room for everything that happened yesterday to arrive all at once. You feel it too, standing there at the edge of the tent flap, listening to that silence press against the canvas. Only yesterday, Abhimanyu was laughing by the fire. Only yesterday, he was young enough to look out of place in armor. Then Drona built his spinning formation, the Chakravyuha, layer upon layer, a moving wheel of soldiers and chariots, turning with perfect discipline. From the outside, it looked almost beautiful, the way a well-drilled herd can look graceful. Almost. But beauty on a battlefield is usually just a trap wearing perfume. Abhimanyu knew how to enter that wheel. He had learned it the way children learn things they shouldn't know, half heard, half understood, carried like a secret toy. He promised he could break a path. The elders, desperate and proud and terrified, let him go first. And the wheel opened. It swallowed him. You could hear it from a distance yesterday, the roar when he burst inside, the sudden, sharp cheering as the Pandava line believed, for one shining moment, that courage would be enough. Then the sound changed. It grew muffled, distant, like someone shouting underwater. Because outside the formation, the ones who should have followed were held back. Jayadratha stood there like a gate slammed shut, blessed for one day with the power to stop them. Bhima raged against it. Yudhishthira pushed and pushed. Even the wind seemed to resist them. But the wheel kept turning. Inside, Abhimanyu fought as if the sun itself was watching. His bow sang. His arrows flew so fast, they made a kind of music, high, thin, relentless. For a while, the formation didn't look like a wheel at all. It looked like it was breaking. And then the grown men decided they were done pretending. They came at him together, not one at a time, not with clean challenges. They pressed in like a crowd, like wolves, like debt collectors who have finally found the door unlocked. His chariot was wrecked. His horses went down. His charioteer fell. His weapons were struck away, one after another, until the boy who should have been protected by age and honor was standing alone on the earth itself. And still he fought. He fought with a sword. When the sword was gone, he fought with whatever his hand found, like a prince who had been reduced to a child again, grabbing anything at all, refusing to understand that the world had decided he was expendable. When the end came, it came fast. A mace rose, a final blow, the terrible sudden stillness, no lingering at all, just the wheel turning on, as if it had swallowed a boy and found him no heavier than a mouthful of dust. Now, in the pale morning, that dust is in Arjuna's hair. It's on his lashes, on his hands. It clings to him the way sorrow clings, quietly, stubbornly, refusing to be shaken off. Krishna sits near him, steady as a mountain in blue skin and gold. He doesn't try to pry the grief out like a thorn. He lets it exist. Then, when the time comes, he leans in close and reminds Arjuna of what still moves on the field. Jayadratha, the man who held them back, the gate, the reason Abhimanyu was alone. Arjuna's grief hardens, not into peace, into purpose. He rises, and you can almost feel the air change, like a storm deciding it's done waiting. He makes a vow that tastes like iron. He swears that before the sun sets today, Jayadratha will fall, and if not, he will not survive his own failure. It's the kind of promise that makes soldiers swallow hard, because it doesn't just threaten one man's life, it threatens the spine of an entire army. You step outside and the heat hits you, already building. The ground is warm under your feet, dust puffing with every hurried step. Conches sound again. Drums begin. 100 small noises stitch themselves into one enormous, living roar. Day 14 begins. The battlefield stretches wide, a shimmering sheet of spears and banners, chariots like beetles glinting under the sun. You taste grit on your tongue. You smell sweat, horse, hot metal, and crushed grass. Arjuna climbs onto his chariot. Krishna takes the reins. And when the wheels begin to roll, it feels like the earth itself is being pulled forward. The Kauravas know the vow. They don't need spies. They can read it in Arjuna's posture, in the way his bow rests in his hand, like it belongs there more than fingers do. So they hide Jayadratha deep, not behind one line, behind many. Drona sends formations forward like living nets, shifting, folding, tightening. Warriors who once would have been centerpieces, men praised in courts, men with shining names, stand now like locked doors in a long corridor. Each one must be forced open. Arjuna cuts a path. The sounds around you become unreal. The whip crack of bowstrings, the clatter of chariot wheels on hard ground, the shout of commanders, the trumpet of elephants. Above it all, arrows hiss like angry rain. You watch men fall and rise and fall again, swallowed by dust. A banner topples, a chariot tips, a horse bolts, eyes rolling white, and vanishes into the chaos like it's decided to quit the war and start a new life somewhere quieter. There's even a moment, absurd, almost funny, when two rival chariots slam into each other and both drivers look equally offended, as if this wasn't exactly what the day demanded. But nothing stays funny for long here. The sun climbs, time narrows, every heartbeat becomes a measurement. Arjuna fights like a man racing the sky. He drives forward and forward and forward, while behind him the day grinds on in its own separate tragedies. Drona surges again and again toward Yudhishthira, trying to seize him in the mayhem, like a hand reaching for the throat of the war itself. And somewhere, always somewhere, Jayadratha is being moved like a precious jewel, kept just out of reach. By afternoon the light turns harsh and white. Your eyes sting from sweat. The air wavers above the ground. Even the flags look tired, their cloths snapping weakly in the hot wind. Arjuna is still not there, still not at the center, still not close enough. The Kauravas begin to believe in the sun more than they believe in Arjuna. They start to glance upward with the confidence of people who think time is on their side, because time usually is. And then, near the edge of late day, when the shadows lengthen just a little, Krishna does something that makes the world feel suddenly wrong. The light changes. It dims as if a veil has been pulled across the sun. A strange twilight falls early over the field. The air cools too quickly. Men look up, blinking, confused. You feel it in your skin first, like the day has stumbled. A murmur runs through the Kaurava ranks. Sunset. It must be sunset. The vow is broken. Arjuna has failed. For a breath, the war pauses in disbelief. And in that pause, Jayadratha, safe for a moment, or so he thinks, shifts forward from his hiding place. Not boldly, not heroically, more like a man stepping out after the rain has stopped, testing the air. That's when Krishna lets the veil lift. Light returns. The sun is still there, blazing and indifferent, as if it never left. And Arjuna, who has been waiting for this single opening like an arrow held at full draw, releases. One shot, clean as a bell tone. Jayadratha's head is taken from his shoulders and sent flying, not into the dust of Kurukshetra, but far beyond, into his father's waiting lap. A vow is fulfilled. The air shakes with shouting. The Pandavas surge with renewed force. The Kauravas reel, stunned, as if someone has punched the day itself. And you, standing in the middle of it, feel the strange dizziness of it all. How a single moment can change the shape of a world. But the sun does not stop for anyone. It keeps sinking. And now, when sunset truly arrives, no one trusts it. Darkness comes anyway. Real darkness, the kind that makes the edges of things disappear, the kind that turns a battlefield into a different planet. Torches flare up across Kurukshetra, hundreds of them, then thousands, little orange tongues snapping in the wind. Their smoke crawls low and bitter, stinging your nose and coating the back of your throat. You can hear the crackle of oil-soaked cloth, the soft rush of flame eating air. You can hear men calling to each other and not being answered. You can hear the sudden, ugly realization spreading. There will be no rest tonight. This is the first night battle, and it feels like someone has opened a door that should have stayed shut. Under torchlight, armor looks wrong. Faces look like masks. The whites of eyes flash and vanish. Shadows leap and twist across the ground, making every moving thing seem twice as large. Orders dissolve. Formations dissolve. The rules that were already cracked in daylight simply fall apart in the dark. Somewhere in the Kaurava camp, Duryodhana watches the field and feels the world slipping from his grip, because the night does not belong to ordinary men. The night belongs to those who were born for it. And Ghatotkacha, Bhima's son, Hidimbi's son, steps into the darkness like he's stepping into his own house. You see him at the edge of the Pandava line first, as a shape, too tall, too broad, a silhouette with shoulders like cliffs, hair wild, ornaments glinting. His eyes catch torchlight and throw it back with a strange brightness. Around him, his Rakshasa warriors move with a different rhythm than human soldiers. They don't shuffle. They don't hesitate. They flow. They look delighted, honestly, as if someone finally stopped forcing them to behave politely. And then Ghatotkacha begins. He doesn't charge like a man. He seems to appear where he wants to be. One moment he's there near Bhima, the next he's deeper in the field, laughter rolling out of him, low, booming, almost joyful. He uses the night the way a fish uses water. Illusions bloom, sudden fires in places that shouldn't burn, shapes that rush forward and vanish, voices that come from the wrong direction. Kaurava soldiers swing at shadows and find nothing, then turn and find a Rakshasa already behind them, ending their breath with quick, merciful efficiency. Elephants panic at the wrong scent. Horses rear, eyes wide, foam on their lips, refusing to charge into a darkness that feels alive. A chariot wheel snaps on a stone, and the whole thing tips, torchlight spilling like liquid fire. Someone scrambles away, singed and furious, and you can't help thinking, even the ground has joined the ambush. The Kaurava line begins to fold, not in a neat retreat, in a frightened, stumbling collapse. Because how do you fight what you can't predict? How do you keep courage when the night itself seems to take sides? You taste smoke, you taste fear. The air is cooler now, but the heat of bodies and flame makes it patchy, cold in one breath, scorching in the next. And above it all, you hear Duryodhana's panic start to sharpen into something like desperation. He turns toward Karna. Karna stands under torchlight, like a statue that learned to breathe. Gold gleams on him. His armor catches the firelight and throws it back hard, as if even flames can't soften him. He watches Ghatotkacha reeking through the Kaurava ranks, and you can feel the calculation happening behind his eyes. This is not the opponent he saved his greatest weapon for. This is not the duel he wanted. But the field doesn't care what you wanted. Duryodhana presses close, speaking fast, urgent, pointing at the wreckage the knight is making of his army. He doesn't plead gracefully. Kings rarely do when their world is cracking. He demands rescue. He demands certainty. And finally, he demands the one thing Karna has guarded like a secret heartbeat. Use it, the Shakti. You feel the moment land like a stone dropped into a still pond. Even if you don't know the spear yet, you can sense its weight in the air, the way men sense a storm before it arrives. Karna's hand tightens slightly, as if around something only he can feel. Around him, the torches hiss, the smoke curls. Ghatotkacha's laughter rolls again across the dark, nearer now, as if he's circling. And Duryodhana, voice raw with fear and command, forces it into a single order, one short sentence that turns the night colder. Use the Shakti. Karna does not answer quickly. He keeps his gaze on the field, on the chaos, on the Rakshasa prince, moving like a nightmare given muscle. You stand there with the torchlight trembling on your skin, hearing the war roar and whisper at once. The weapon meant for Arjuna is about to be asked of the night. The night tightens around Karna, the spear in Karna's hand, the demon in the sky, the choice that will echo forever. For a breath, it almost feels like the war is holding still, like even the horses have paused to listen. Torches gutter in the wind, throwing nervous light across helms and cheekbones and the hard edges of armor. Smoke lies low, smelling of oil, singed cloth, and churned up dust that the night can't quite settle. You're close enough to Karna to see the way his jaw works once, slow and controlled, as if he's biting down on something bitter. He doesn't look at Duryodhana, he looks up, because that's where the trouble is. Ghatotkacha is not fighting like a man who expects to survive the dawn. He moves through the dark like it belongs to him, and the dark answers back, shadows deepening around him, shapes warping, distance, bending. Every time a torch flares, the light seems to show him in a different place than he truly is. A moment ago, he was over the left flank, huge and laughing. Now he's above the center, and something falls from the sky. Stones, burning brands, the kind of impossible rain only a Rakshasa would think to bring to a battlefield. The Kaurava ranks buckle and scatter, not because they're cowards, but because there's nowhere sensible to stand when the night itself is throwing things at you. You taste soot on your tongue. You hear men yelling orders that don't land because the darkness eats direction. And when Ghatotkacha laughs again, it rolls over the field like a drumbeat. Too pleased, too sure, like he's found the one place in the world where he fits perfectly. Karna's charioteer shifts uneasily on the seat, hands tight on the reins. Even the horses, trained for war, bred for noise, keep flicking their ears back, snorting, stamping, as if they can smell sorcery. Duryodhana is still beside Karna, too close, too loud, a king who has forgotten dignity in the face of disaster. You can feel his desperation coming off him like heat from a kiln. He keeps gesturing at the field, at the broken formations, at the way warriors who have faced Bhima in daylight are now stumbling around like men in a bad dream. He doesn't need to explain. Karna can see it. The night is eating their army. And yet, Karna's hand does not move toward an ordinary weapon. Because the Shakti is not ordinary. It isn't even kept like other weapons, stacked and ready. It's held back, guarded. Not from enemies. Everyone wants weapons. It's guarded from time itself, from impulse, from the trembling human urge to use the most terrible thing simply because you can. You stand there with him, and the air feels denser, as if the spear is already in the world, taking up space. Karna closes his eyes for a heartbeat. In that heartbeat, the night battlefield fades. A different heat rises, not the sweaty heat of men packed into armor, but the clean, bright heat of a sun that watches everything without blinking. He remembers a day that still stings like fresh insult. A Brahmana had come to him once, gentle-voiced, humble, eyes lowered. A beggar, it seemed. Karna, generous as breathing, had welcomed the request. What could a man ask of him that he would not give? And then the request had fallen like an axe. Not gold, not cattle, not a kingdom. His own protection. The armor that had grown with him, the golden covering that made him feel since boyhood, like the world could throw anything and he would stand. The earrings, bright as small suns, that marked him as touched by something greater than human luck. You can almost feel it. How strange it must be to peel away your own invincibility with your own hands. There had been no refusing. That was never Karna's way. Not when someone came asking, not when his pride was being tested in public, under the gaze of people who loved to see him cornered. So he had given it. And the beggar had not stayed a beggar. The air had changed. The light had sharpened. The humble posture had straightened into authority. Indra himself, king of the gods, father of Arjuna, had stood revealed, holding Karna's gift like a trophy he hadn't quite earned. A god taking from a man, and because even gods have shame, Indra had offered compensation. A spear, a single perfect weapon, one use, one certainty, and Karna had taken it, not with gratitude, but with that quiet, burning patience he carries like an extra organ. He had taken it because he understood exactly what Indra thought he was doing. Protecting his son, tilting the world. The memory snaps away as a flash of light bursts across the battlefield. one of Ghatotkacha's tricks, a sudden blaze that turns night into a harsh blue glare. For an instant, you see everything too clearly. Warriors squinting, shields lifted too late, the ground littered with snapped arrows and dropped weapons, the uneven lines where discipline has simply dissolved. Then the light collapses. Darkness pours back in. And with it comes the sound of something heavy landing on wood, a chariot cracking, men stumbling, not screaming. War has trained that out of them, but making those sharp, startled noises people make when the world behaves wrongly. Karna opens his eyes. They are steady. But the steadiness is not calm. It is a man holding two lives in his mind at once. Arjuna and Duryodhana, you can feel it standing near him, how those names pull him in opposite directions like ropes tied to his ribs. Arjuna is the rival, the bright wound, the one who has always stood on the other side of every proving ground, the one Karna has promised himself again and again that he will meet properly, in daylight, in a clean duel that the world cannot argue with. Duryodhana is different. Duryodhana is the hand that reached out when everyone else turned away. The only one who called Karna friend without tasting the word first, checking whether it would poison him. The king who gave him a seat, a title, a place to stand, where no one could pretend he was nothing. And now that king is here, frantic and hoarse, watching his army get unmade by a half-demon who laughs at rules. The war does not pause to let Karna be poetic about it. Ghatotkacha drops again from the sky, and this time you see the shape of him against torchlight. Massive shoulders, wild hair, ornaments that catch firelight and throw it back like sparks. He isn't just striking warriors down. He's mocking them, confusing them, turning their courage into a clumsy dance. A cluster of Kaurava soldiers rush together, thinking numbers will help. Ghatotkacha changes, not slowly, nothing polite like that. He swells larger, as if the night has fed him extra limbs and extra weight, and the poor men below him suddenly look like children who have brought sticks to a storm. Somebody shouts for archers. Archers shoot. Arrows vanish into darkness, swallowed by illusion, and return in the wrong direction, making men duck their own side's shots. It would almost be funny, in a different world, the way trained warriors start flinching at shadows, like village boys, almost. But then another chariot goes down, and another. You smell horses' sweat, sharp, animal, panicked, mixing with the sweet, sickly edge of burning oil. Duryodhana shifts his weight from foot to foot, like he wants to climb into Karna's skin and make the choice himself. His fear has become command, and his command has become pleading, and he is too proud to notice the change. Karna's face doesn't soften. His eyes do, just slightly, because he understands that if the Kaurava army breaks tonight, there may not be a tomorrow worth saving the spear for. He glances once, just once, toward the Pandava side. It's a dark mass of movement and torchlight and distant cries. Somewhere in that chaos is Bhima, fighting with the kind of fury that only family grief can sharpen. Somewhere is Arjuna too, not sleeping, not resting, still raw from the day's vow and the boy's fall. And somewhere out there, Ghatotkacha is making the battlefield his personal sky. You feel the scale of the night then. It isn't just two armies clashing, it's a world tipping. Karna inhales. The breath is audible in the small pocket of quiet around his chariot, like the ocean pulling back before a wave. He reaches, not to the quiver, not to the sword. He reaches to where the Shakti is kept, It doesn't sit in plain view like a proud trophy. It's wrapped, restrained, treated almost like a living thing that might wake if you stare too long. As his fingers close around it, you can imagine the weight settling into his palm. Heavy, yes, but more than heavy, certain. The cloth slides back. A dull glow shows itself, not bright like torch fire, but deep, like embers under ash. The spear's surface looks too clean for a battlefield, too untouched by smoke and grime, as if it refuses to belong to this messy human struggle. The air changes. Even if you didn't know what he held, you would feel it anyway. Men nearby turn their heads. A few step back without meaning to. The horses go still, ears forward now, not panicked, alert, as if they've sensed a predator larger than any animal. Karna lifts the Shakti, not high yet, just enough that the torchlight catches it. And for a moment, you see him as he truly is in this war, not merely a warrior, but a promise walking on 2 feet. A man who has spent his whole life collecting slights and turning them into a single sharpened purpose. This spear is that purpose. It was meant to find Arjuna. It was meant to end the rivalry in one clean line drawn across fate. And now it is being asked to do something else. Karna looks at Duryodhana at last. He doesn't speak much. He never has when it matters. But the look is enough. It says, "You are asking for the one thing I swore I would save." Duryodhana's answer is written all over him. Yes, he is asking. He is asking because kings do not like being helpless, because the night is humiliating him, because his army is cracking, and his pride is cracking with it. And because somewhere under all that pride, there's a terrified human being who can see his end approaching on giant Rakshasa footsteps. The wind shifts. A gust brings the smell of crushed grass and churned earth, damp underneath the smoke, Kurukshetra's soil breathing up into the night. It's strangely grounding, that smell, like the land itself, trying to remind everyone, you are all standing on me, no matter what gods you bargain with. Ghatotkacha swings back through the dark again, closer, as if he can sense the change near Karna. His laughter stops, not because he's afraid, because he's curious. He has been the storm all night, and now, finally, something on the ground is answering him with its own kind of weather. You feel your own skin prickle. The hairs on your arms lift under the thin film of sweat and dust. Karna steps fully onto his chariot platform. The wood creaks under him. He plants his feet the way a man does when he expects the world to push back. He raises the Shakti a little higher, and the glow deepens like the spear has taken a breath with him. For a heartbeat, there is an almost ridiculous thought. Soft, human, stupid, in the middle of war, that the spear looks too perfect to be used, like a ceremonial thing meant to be admired, not thrown into the chaos of men slipping in mud and shouting into smoke. Then Ghatotkacha hurls another wave of illusion across the field. Torches flare and vanish. A line of soldiers runs the wrong way, colliding with their own chariots. And the ridiculous thought is swept away. Karna's face settles into something final. He is no longer weighing. He isn't bargaining anymore. He has made the choice. You can feel it in the stillness of his shoulders, in the way his grip stops adjusting and becomes absolute. Somewhere far off, a conch sounds, thin, distant, half lost in the night. But it lands in your chest like a warning. Karna draws his arm back. The spear's glow crawls along the shaft, gathering toward the tip, as if the weapon is remembering what it was made to do. Ghatotkacha hangs in the air for one suspended instant, massive against the smoky sky, like a dark moon, and Karna, with the whole night pressing against his back, prepares to release the one certainty he has ever owned. The spear flies, the demon falls, and in the Pandava camp, someone starts laughing. But first, the release. Karna's arm snaps forward, clean and final, like a door being shut. The Shakti doesn't wobble the way an ordinary spear would. It doesn't arc like a thrown thing. It leaves his hand, and the air seems to step aside for it, as if the night itself remembers its manners around gods. For one breath, everything goes strangely quiet. You can still hear the little sounds under the war, the restless stamp of a horse, the creak of leather, the hiss of torch oil in a wind that smells of smoke and trampled grass. Then the weapon begins to sing, not like a flute, not sweet, a tight, bright hum that makes your teeth feel too close together. It streaks across the battlefield, cutting through drifting ash, through confused arrows, through the messy human noise of men trying to find their own side in the dark. Ghatotkacha sees it. Of course he does. He's hanging high above the ground, huge against the night, his shadow swallowing whole patches of torchlight. For a heartbeat, he looks amused, almost offended, like someone has tossed a needle at a mountain. Then he changes. You feel it before you truly see it. The shift in pressure, the way the air thickens. The torches flicker like they're suddenly starved. The horses scream and pull against their reins, refusing to look up. Ghatotkacha expands, not step by step, not politely. He swells into something impossible, into a towering shape that blocks out the stars and turns the sky into a single dark presence. His ornaments flash like little moons. His hair whips around his head in a storm that isn't made of weather, but of will. Down below, soldiers run, and for a ridiculous second, you watch a man try to drag a chariot wheel out of the way with both hands, as if he's rearranging furniture while the heavens decide to fall. The Shakti keeps coming. It doesn't hesitate. It doesn't admire the size of its target. It doesn't care that this is a son of Bhima, a creature of night, a warrior made for chaos. It only knows what it was made to do. It finds him. There's no explosion of gore, no terrible tearing, just a sudden, absolute certainty, like a lamp being snuffed, like a song ending on a note so final you can't imagine the next one. Ghatotkacha's vast body stiffens in the air. His magic, which had been dancing everywhere a moment ago, fire rains, phantom elephants, walls of smoke, stutters like a tired drummer losing the beat. The illusions thin, torches become torches again, men become men again, small, panting, stunned, blinking at one another as if waking from a bad dream they've been sharing. And high above, the giant begins to tip. You're standing there with the taste of smoke on your tongue, and it hits you. He's falling, not like a feather, not like a hero gracefully sinking to the earth, like a mountain finally giving up. For a moment, his arms move, wide and slow, as if he's trying to catch himself on the air. His ornaments clatter softly, an eerie sound at that height, like distant temple bells carried by wind. Below him, the Kaurava ranks are packed tight, shoulder to shoulder, chariots wedged between foot soldiers, everyone pressed together by fear and the narrowness of night. They look up and understand at the same time. This isn't going to land gently. And Ghatotkacha, still himself, still conscious in that last sliver of time, turns his falling body with intention, even now. Even like this, he twists, angling his weight toward the densest part of the enemy line, toward the place where the torches burn brightest and the banners crowd together like a forest of spears. You can feel the wind of his descent before he arrives. It rushes over the field, dragging smoke with it, blowing dust into your eyes, flattening torch flames sideways. The sound becomes a roar, not from throats, but from air, being bullied out of the way. And then he hits. The earth shudders, chariots topple, horses bolt, snapping reins, their hooves throwing up clouds of dry soil that smell old and hot. Thousands are scattered, crushed under sheer weight and panic and the collapse of formation. It's not a neat victory. It's the battlefield, being reminded that it is always hungry. Ghatotkacha lies there, his enormous form sprawled across the ground like a fallen piece of the sky. For a second, there's silence again. A strange hush, like the pause after thunder, when even the birds forget to speak. Then the Kaurava side erupts, not in joy exactly, but in relief so fierce it sounds like celebration. Men who had been running for their lives a moment ago suddenly remember pride. They lift their weapons and shout Karna's name until their voices crack. Torches surge forward, lighting up the smoke in bright orange waves. You see faces tilted upward, eyes shining, mouths open, as if they've been drowning, and someone finally hauled them to shore. Karna stands rigid on his chariot. His hand is empty now. The fingers that held the Shakti flex once, as if they expect the spear to still be there, warm and humming. He doesn't smile. He doesn't sag with relief. He looks altered, like a man who has paid for something and doesn't yet know what he bought. The glow that had surrounded his chariot is gone. Around him, the night feels ordinary again. Torchlight, smoke, the stink of sweat and churned earth. A soldier nearby laughs too loudly, the kind of laugh that tries to push fear back into the dark. Someone else nearly trips over a fallen shield and curses the shield, as if it placed itself there out of spite. And on the other side of the field, the Pandava camp feels the change, like a bruise forming. You can sense it traveling through them before any messenger arrives. The Rakshasa cries, "Go quiet." Bhima is somewhere out there in the dark, and even if you can't see his face, you can imagine the moment he realizes the shape on the ground is his son. The wind shifts. It brings a different smell now, less of torch oil, more of dust and crushed grass, and the faint sweetness of smashed flowers from someone's garland ground into the earth. A conch sounds, low and wounded, not a call to charge, a sound made by men who don't know what else to do with their mouths. Arjuna's camp is a bundle of grief already, and this grief lands on top of it like another stone. The warriors who had been struggling to hold back despair after Abhimanyu now feel another young life extinguished, another bright, reckless flame put out by the hands of older men. For a breath, it's almost too much. You stand in that space between the lines, feeling the heat of torches on one cheek and the cool night on the other, and you realize how tired everyone is. Not tired like after a long walk, tired in the bones, tired in the soul, tired in the way even victory tastes like ash. Then, from the Pandava side, a sound cuts through the grief. Laughter, not loud at first, not the relief laughter you heard among the Kauravas either. This one is sharp and bright and strange, like a bell rung at the wrong hour. It comes from Krishna. You can see him by the faint gleam of his ornaments, by the calm of his posture in a world that has forgotten calm exists. Torches around him waver, as if they're unsure whether to obey the wind or his presence. The warriors near him stare. Bhima's rage is a thing you can almost taste. Hot, metallic, immediate. Even the horses pick it up, stamping and shaking their heads, foam flecking their bits. Someone demands to know why Krishna is laughing, why he would make that sound when Ghatotkacha has fallen. Krishna doesn't argue with their fury. He lets it rise and burn for a moment because it's real and it deserves its breath. Then he answers in a voice that carries without effort, as if the night itself leans in to listen. He reminds them of the weapon Karna has carried like a secret son. He reminds them who it was meant for. He makes it plain, simple as a fact that cannot be avoided. And he says, softly but clearly, that weapon was meant for Arjuna. The words hang there, not triumphant, not comforting, just true. You watch Arjuna's face, already carved hollow by the day, tighten in a new way, like a man realizing he has been spared by a door that closed on someone else. Bhima's breath comes hard, like a bull in a narrow stall. Krishna's laughter fades, and what's left in his eyes is not cruelty, and not sweetness either. It's the steady gaze of someone who sees the whole board, even when the pieces are screaming. He tells them, in fewer words than the grief wants, that Ghatotkacha's fall was not empty. The Shakti is gone now, spent on the night-born giant, and somewhere in the distance, Karna's empty hand closes again around an ordinary weapon, and for the first time in years, his certainty is no longer guaranteed by a single divine point of light. Across the field, torches bob and surge as the Kauravas scramble to press their advantage, drunk on relief. The sound of chariot wheels returns, grinding over stone and broken shafts. Conches answer conches, echoing across the dark plain like anxious birds calling to one another. And beside Krishna, the Pandavas stand in their grief, feeling the shape of what was lost. A son who grew too fast, a warrior who belonged to night, a boy who answered his father's call every time until the last time. The smoke thins for a moment, and above the battlefield, the stars return, small, indifferent, quietly watching, as if nothing ever fell from the sky at all. The torches keep moving out there, little knots of flame drifting across the dark plain, like fireflies that forgot how to be gentle. And you can feel it in your own body, even from far away, how the night air smells of soot and trampled grass, how the ground seems to hold the heat of a long, brutal day. So after all of that, the forest wedding, the boy who grew too fast, the night the sky fell, what were the ancient storytellers trying to tell us? Not in the way a priest instructs you, more like the way an old friend nudges your shoulder and says, sit, breathe, this part matters. Because Ghatotkacha's life begins in a place that doesn't look like glory at all. It begins in exile, in hunger and fear and long miles through forest shade, with 5 brothers sleeping in dust and leaves, and a mother trying not to show how tired she is. And then, of all things, love shows up. Not in a palace, not with garlands and trumpets, in the form of Hidimbi, watching from the trees. And the way that love moves in that moment is the first lesson they wanted you to carry. Hidimbi doesn't arrive with a list of demands. She doesn't bargain for status or security or a promise carved in stone. She looks at Bhima, sweat-soaked, stubborn, half wild with exhaustion, and she chooses him anyway. She asks for 1 month, one small season of belonging, and she gives him something he can't repay: shelter in the forest, softness in a life that has gone hard. It's such a strange tenderness, isn't it? In the middle of danger, the world pauses just long enough for a Rakshasi to love, like a lamp in wind, steady, almost impossible. Then Bhima leaves. And that's the second lesson, and it's a little painful because it's so human. Bhima is brave in battle. Bhima is loyal to his brothers. But fatherhood comes to him like a duty he never learned to carry gracefully. He does what he can do. He promises what men always promise when they're walking away. He'll return, he'll come back, he'll make it right. And Hidimbi, who knows the taste of centuries and the way human lives run like water, lets him go without tearing him apart for it. Not because it doesn't hurt, because love, in her, is not a chain. It's a door. You can almost see her in that forest after the Pandavas disappear, standing alone where the leaves are still warm from their bodies, the air thick with jasmine and damp earth, holding a child who changes in her arms faster than breath. Ghatotkacha grows too fast because the world won't wait for him. That's the third lesson. Some people don't get the slow, ordinary path. Some people are made into adults before they understand what childhood even is. One day, he's small enough to fit against his mother's ribs. The next, his hands are already too big, his hunger already too sharp, his eyes already watching the horizon like someone who expects to be left. And then, year after year, he becomes that strange thing, half of one world, half of another. Too night-born for the human campfires, too human-hearted for the demon groves. The ancient word for the pull of your life, your role, your responsibility, your thread in the great woven cloth is Dharma. And Ghatotkacha's Dharma is complicated because nobody ever gives him a clean place to stand. When the Pandavas need him, they call, and when they don't, the silence closes again. No ceremonies, no everyday warmth, just that summoning. Yet he comes. Every time, not because he's naive, because devotion for him becomes a kind of home. And when the war finally calls everyone to Kurukshetra, you see what that devotion costs. He arrives with an army that makes the human soldiers step back from the fires. He stands too tall. His shadow falls wrong. Even when he is on their side, people watch him like an accident waiting to happen. And still, he fights for them. There's a word for the strange shimmer that makes you believe you belong or don't belong. The surface illusion that feels like the whole truth. Maya. Maya tells you, if you're not welcomed, you're not worthy. Maya tells you, if you're not pure, you're not loved. But Ghatotkacha walks straight through that fog. He never fits anywhere, and still he chooses. Not the easy choice either. The choice that ends with the sky splitting open and a divine weapon leaving Karna's hand. And this is where sacrifice in this world stops being shiny. People love to dress sacrifice in gold. They love to sing about it. But the sacrifice at Kurukshetra that night is not a song. It is a decision made in darkness, while torches gutter and tired men stumble and rules collapse like wet paper. Ghatotkacha becomes huge, fearsome, impossible, and then he falls, not as punishment, not as a mistake, as an offering. Dharma, in its quietest form, is not doing what looks noble. It's doing what must be done when the choices are all bruised and ugly. And sometimes Dharma asks for something unbearable. To give yourself for people who won't know how to hold your memory properly. Bhima will mourn like a storm. Arjuna will stand there stunned, realizing his life has been purchased by another's end. Krishna will look at the board the way only he can, seeing tomorrow inside tonight. But the camps will move on quickly. War does that. War is always hungry for the next hour. So the storytellers leave you with a truth that feels almost too real. Devotion doesn't always get thanked in the moment. Sometimes it gets used. Sometimes it gets buried under louder griefs. And still, in Ghatotkacha, devotion remains devotion. Then there's karma, not a neat little reward and punishment tally. Karma is the web, the chain of actions, choices, gifts, trails, threads pulled years ago that tighten around someone's throat tonight. Karna once gave away his own protection. Indra gave him the Shakti as compensation. Karna carried it, saving it, nursing it like a private sunrise meant for Arjuna. And in the end, that same divine gift becomes the reason Arjuna keeps breathing. No one planned it like that. No one could. Karma doesn't ask permission before it connects the dots. It simply connects them. And that, too, is part of what the ancient keepers of this tale wanted preserved. Not that life is fair, not that goodness guarantees safety, but that actions travel. They outlive the moment they were made. They return wearing different faces. So when you hold Ghatotkacha in your mind, the lonely boy, the too fast-grown warrior, the outsider who kept answering, let the ending settle softly. He did not spend his life trying to be accepted. He spent it choosing to love anyway. And if that sounds simple, it isn't. It's one of the hardest dharmas there is. Out on the plain, the torches still drift. Somewhere, a conch calls, hoarse with overuse. The smoke thins again, and the stars keep their patient places. And in that quiet overhead, cold, steady, unblinking, you can feel the last comfort of it. A half-night-born son, summoned all his life, finally made one choice that was entirely his. He answered a call no one spoke aloud. And the world, for all its cruelty and noise, was changed by that answer. The battle continues, but something has changed in the dark. For a moment, it's almost quiet, just enough quiet to notice the Ganga wind again, cool against your cheek, carrying smoke and trampled grass. Then the sound returns in waves, hooves, wheels, the dull clang of metal that's been struck too many times today. Men shouting names into the night like names can stitch the world back together. Torches sway everywhere. They make the plain look like a field of fireflies that have learned anger. You stand on ground that has forgotten what stillness is. Dust clings to your ankles. The air tastes of ash and ghee from overturned lamps. Somewhere close, a conch tries to call a clean note, and it comes out rough, like a throat that's been crying for hours. Ghatotkacha is gone. Not as a rumor, not as a distant shape in the sky. Gone in the way a mountain is gone when it collapses, leaving a new emptiness behind, a new shape to the night. And Bhima feels it. You can see him even in this chaos, because he moves like a storm with a spine. He doesn't search. He doesn't hesitate. He simply drives forward, smashing through the press of bodies and banners, as if the world has offended him personally. His mouth is set hard. His eyes are bright. There is no speech, no grand vow you can hear over the noise. He doesn't need one. His grief is already an engine. Every step he takes says the same thing. The night took my son, and the night will pay. The torches around him tilt away as soldiers flinch back, not from fear of a demon now, but from fear of a father who has nothing left to lose. Above, the sky clears a little. The smoke thins in ragged patches, and stars begin to show through, cold pinpoints, indifferent and steady. They look the same as they did before the war. That's the strangest part. The heavens don't change their habits for anyone. Not even for boys who grow too fast. Not even for fathers who break in half and keep walking. On the other side of the plain, Karna sits for a breath inside the cradle of his chariot. You can almost feel the weight missing from his hand for so long that Shakti was a secret pressure in his life, a promise, a threat, a private certainty. Now his palm is empty. His fingers curl once, out of habit, like they expect the divine dart to still be there. But there's only air, only the rough wrap of leather on an ordinary bow. He reaches for his usual weapons, and they feel smaller, not weak, never weak, just normal suddenly, as if a man has spent years carrying a sunbeam in his fist and now must return to iron. The horses stamp and toss their heads. They smell the panic in the army. They smell the night cooling down. They smell that a great terror has ended, and another kind has begun. Duryodhana's relief moves through his ranks, like a drink passed hand to hand. You can see shoulders unclench. You can hear laughter that doesn't belong on a battlefield, sharp and too loud, the kind that comes when fear finally loosens its grip. But even that relief is restless, because the war has taught everyone a lesson by now. Nothing stays solved. A torch sputters beside you, its flame bending low, fighting the damp night air. For a heartbeat, you remember Ghatotkacha as he was in the forest stories, more boy than monster, more longing than menace. A child who watched a human father walk away, then spent his life learning how to arrive on command. And now, there will be no command. No messenger riding through the trees, no horn blown at the edge of the Rakshasa hills, no sudden shout of his name in the night. Just this silence where his answer used to be. Far from Kurukshetra, beyond the reach of conch shells and kings, there is another night, a quieter one. The forest there is thick, breathing slow. Leaves shine like dark coins after a light mist. The air is sweet with jasmine and wet. Earth and the river nearby speaks to itself without ever needing to raise its voice. Hidimbi waits in that forest, not pacing like a worried human, not wringing her hands. Rakshasis do not wear fear the same way. She sits very still beneath a tree that knows her scent, her history, her solitude. The bark is rough against her back. The soil is cool under her feet. Somewhere above her, an owl calls once, then stops, as if listening for an answer. She has always known what war does. She has always known what humans promise. Still, a mother waits. Sometimes she looks toward the open sky between branches, as if news might fall through the leaves like a fruit. Sometimes she closes her eyes and remembers a different darkness. The first time she saw Bhima, sweat-salted and exhausted, carrying his family through the forest as if the world was nothing but weight and duty. And then she remembers her son, growing in a way no human child grows, growing like a flame, bright, hungry, impossible to keep small. In Kurukshetra, that flame has gone out, but the warmth of it lingers. Back on the plain, the night battle drags on, heavy and stubborn. Torches are replaced. Broken chariots are shoved aside. Men step over fallen standards like they're stepping over yesterday's argument. Bhima keeps moving. Arjuna still fights. But there's a strange steadiness in him now, like someone who has already spent his worst grief and found the world still standing. His eyes are ringed with exhaustion. His arms move on memory. Krishna stays close, reins in hand, guiding the chariot through gaps that appear and vanish like breath. Karna, too, keeps fighting. What else can he do? The Shakti is gone, and with it, a certain clean ending he had been saving. Now he must live inside the ordinary danger of every moment. Ordinary and still terrible. His jaw tightens, his shoulders square. He becomes, again, the man who survives on skill and stubbornness. The night cools further. You can feel it in the way sweat turns cold on the skin, in the way torch smoke hangs lower, in the way your lungs welcome air that isn't all heat and ash. Somewhere, a stray dog slips along the edge of the camps, clever enough to avoid feet and wheels, nosing at the earth for scraps. Even here, life continues its small errands. Slowly, almost shyly, the stars reclaim the sky. They come back as the smoke clears, first a few, then many, until the darkness above looks deep and untouched again. The torches gutter beneath them, tiny and desperate. And if you let your eyes soften, if you let the noise blur, you can almost imagine you're far away from the field. You can almost hear a forest instead of a war, a stream instead of a chariot wheel, a mother's breath instead of a conch. Ghatotkacha, half demon, half human, fully someone, spent his whole life being summoned. Tonight, no one calls him, and still he answered. The torches burn lower. The plain grows quieter in brief pockets between surges. The stars hold their patient places, and at last, the darkness feels less like an enemy and more like a curtain being gently drawn.